Welcome to Puro Politics, the political podcast of the San Antonio Express News. My name is Gilbert Garcia, Metro columnist, and I'm joined by
City Hall reporter Joshua Fechter,
business editor and columnist Greg Jefferson,
investigative reporter Brian Chasnoff.
This week marks the beginning of early voting in Texas. We start voting on Tuesday, the 13th. I know there are many of you out there who are deciding to vote by mail this year because of concerns that you might have about the safety of in-person voting with the COVID-19 pandemic. For those of you who don't know, the Bexar County Elections Department does have information on their website where you can track your ballot and see what the status of it is. If you go to their homepage, they have a list of options there, and one of them is tracking your mail ballot, and it's a pretty easy process for anyone who wants to do that. I'm guessing we kind of just talked a little bit about this before we started. I don't think I got a chance to ask you, Josh, but I think the rest of us all were in agreement that we were going to vote in person. Are you going to do that too, Josh?
Yeah, I'm voting at the AT&T Center, man. When's the next time you're going to be able to do that? I want to do it.
That's pretty awesome, actually. Yeah.
I mean, I haven't made a plan. We make it sound like I made a reservation or something. Like I'm going, I'm going to Dorsia.
Right. Yeah. Like 2:30 table for four. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know when I'm going to vote, but I definitely want to take advantage of the fact that you're going to be able to vote at the AT&T Center. Because, again, who knows when you're going to be able to do that.
That's a great point. And I think we all sort of we're feeling like there was a level of control that we needed to have over the process just to be able to see the actual vote go through rather than
for sure
trusting the mail. And I'm not one of those people who thinks that mail voting equals fraud. We had 24% of people in 2016 voting by mail. One of the things that I do think about, though, is that the volume of mail voting is going to be really high this year. And it's going to put a lot of stress, I think, on people who are going to be counting the ballots. And so anyone who feels comfortable and safe voting in person, if you could relieve a little bit of that stress, because, they're going to have a lot of ballots to count in what's really...
Actually...
Yeah, go ahead.
Real quick, I'm not aware of this, but I mean, I know certain states are forbidden from counting mail-in ballots until election day. Is Texas that way?
In Texas, you can't start until early voting ends. So that basically gives them Saturday, Sunday, and Monday to count the mail ballots that have come in, and they're going to still be getting more, as over the course of that time. Jackie Callan, the elections administrator, said that they usually start Sunday. So they're going to have a couple of days before election day to, count, I don't know how many thousands of ballots. So it's going to be a lot. And again, I think it's a safe process, and I think it's an honest process. But if anybody feels like they can maybe just relieve some of the workload on people who are going to be counting ballots over those days, and you want to vote in person, that's probably a good thing.
Apparently,
there's nothing like an election day vibe at the polls. I don't know. I just
right.
I'm kind of I always wait till election day, or normally, to cast my ballot. Part of it's laziness, sloth, that kind of thing, and putting everything off to the last moment. But I also, it's just, I don't know. It's a very nice feeling to go into a kind of crowded, maybe not this year, but there's a nice democratic vibe to the whole thing on election day.
Yeah. Hey, what were you gonna say, Brian?
I was going to say, I was surprised in my reporting last month to learn that at least one of the cost-cutting measures that Postmaster General Louis DeJoy put in place in the summer is still in place. And that's a prohibition on taking extra trips, the mail carriers taking extra trips. So,
yeah,
I mean, it does cast some doubt on the ability of the Postal Service to handle all this mail because of the apparent interference by DeJoy.
Yeah, that's the thing. I'm worried more about the workload for not only the ballot counters but also the postal workers. That's really, if I have concerns about mail voting, it's really coming more from that angle as opposed to, there's a lot of fraud, or there's going to be ballots found in the river or something like that. I want to talk a little bit about Governor Greg Abbott. We've mentioned this on the podcast before that I think the pandemic has really, he was kind of a Teflon governor, had pretty wide bipartisan support in the state until the pandemic. And over the course of trying to kind of navigate this sort of middle course, he's, I think, dissatisfied everyone. And we've really seen that with the election, because he had some of his fellow Republicans, including the Alan West, who's the Republican Party chair for Texas, filing a lawsuit in which they tried to reverse his order that extended early voting a week. He basically, the reason we're starting this Tuesday as opposed to next Tuesday is because he wanted to add some time and sort of stretch out the process a little bit. And there were Republicans who were upset about that and unsuccessfully tried to block that. On the other side of the political aisle, you had Democrats who were upset because Abbott recently decided to restrict the number of mail drop-off locations that people had for early voting. In Harris County, you got 5 million people. You got, I think, 1,800 or so square miles. And they were going to have 12 locations where people could drop them off, including 11, satellite offices. And now they're going to have one for that entire county. So you have people on the Democratic side who have sued. And we had a federal judge who ruled in the favor of the people who were challenging Abbott. And then on Saturday, we had an appeals court that put a stay on that. So we're really kind of in limbo on whether people are going to have multiple locations to drop off mail ballots in some of these counties. Harris and Travis County are probably the two that will be affected the most. Greg, when you look at Abbott, his rationale for saying that you can only have one, as I want to point out that in these counties that have all these satellite offices, you still have to bring your ID. You still have to drop it off with an elections official. Right. Is there any justification that you can see for Abbott saying, no, you can't do it?
I mean, I've thought it through, and unless I'm really missing something, this is simply like a naked act of voter suppression. Yeah. And it's him kind of caving in to his right wing. I mean, I see it as nothing more than that. I don't think you can justify it in any other way. And I think the courts so far have agreed with that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty clear what he's doing here. There's no mistaking it.
And what's so strange is that he on the one hand, he's, again, he tried to open up the process, make it a little, safer given our public health concerns. But then he gets some criticism from his base and he goes the other way. And this has kind of been his pattern over the past few months. We've seen it with his, stay-at-home orders, and then he reverses himself, and he goes back and forth on this. And it's really been a strange thing to watch him sort of kind of twist himself up politically, trying to please everybody, and he hasn't pleased anybody.
And what's the ultimate? But the other, Greg, you're talking about sort of voter suppression, but I also wonder how much of it is just going to be plain sort of voter confusion. I mean, when you have all of this sort of legal back and forth, and you're able to drop off mail-in ballots. Oh, now it's limited. There are headlines about Republicans suing over early voting. How much of this is just going to result in pure confusion? I wonder.
I mean, the thing is, that too is voter suppression. I mean, you have to assume that Abbott is before anything else a lawyer. He was the Texas Attorney General before he was governor. I would be stunned if he didn't assume that there would have been legal action to stop what he was doing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it does create some chaos and a lot of uncertainty. And, even if, Abbott is reversed, there are going to be votes that weren't cast as a result, of all of this uncertainty.
Right. I wanted to talk a little bit about the three big propositions that San Antonians have on the ballot. We're looking at Ready to Work, which is the workforce development proposition that's been championed by Mayor Nirenberg. PreK 4SA, which is really just a continuation of the program started in 2012 by Julian Castro. And then we've got the public transit proposition, which will take the sales tax money that the workforce development program will get, but they'll wait 4 years to get that money after the 4 years of the workforce development. Josh, any developments that we're seeing with these campaigns? I think we've all talked about the fact that PreK for SA looks like the most kind of like a slam dunk. It's been there for several years. People are used to it. I think it's very popular. Anything happening with the other campaigns?
Well, I think it's important to note that like going into this, between the three campaigns, they're sitting on a $1 million sort of war chest. PreK has the largest amount of that. It has about 770,000 in the bank as of its last campaign finance filing. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that's a huge indication of its sort of institutional support and its popularity. Does it need all of that money at this point to get over the finish line when you have these other two initiatives that are not as well defined, have not been means tested in the way that the PreK has been over the past several years. And the thing that strikes me about this is that the one that has been sort of least defined is the Ready to Work campaign. You have even in the days before early voting starts, you're gonna have extra details about how the program is going to work come out. I wrote something over the weekend that was basically about that, about how they're still kind of figuring out how it's going to work, and the bulk of that is not going to take place until after the election. Them figuring out what policies are going to guide this, how it's actually going to be governed. They have some goals that they've been able to articulate. And there's this idea that they're not going to try to reinvent the wheel. They're going to try to rely on sort of existing programs here. They're talking about, having partnerships with Project Quest, Workforce Solutions, Alamo colleges, and all that, and sort of building on things that already exist. But there is a degree of uncertainty for voters going in.
Yeah. Hey, Josh.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Gilbert.
Oh, go ahead, Greg. Sorry.
Yeah. So, with kind of the lack of detail and the fact that, kind of the limited version of this training program that's underway now, I mean, they started, taking applications in what I think it was late August and kind of blew it. I mean, the demand overwhelmed their phone system. You couldn't, there was a period where you couldn't apply online. So it was kind of an embarrassing start. You add to that, the fact that we don't have a lot of specificity. They've got to be really thankful. The organizers of this, the advocates, have to be pretty thankful that there's really no organized opposition, because you could take a lot of this and just slam them. But are you saying, like, am I wrong there? I mean, is there any kind of opposition taking shape?
So as far as organized opposition, that's a little mixed. I mean, the main opposition player that you have here is former mayoral candidate Greg Brockhouse. He's using his broadcast to sort of, as he puts it, sort of supply information about the charter, or not the charter, the sales tax elections, particularly taking aim at VIA and the workforce proposal.
Is he blasting it, or is he just kind of raising questions about it?
I would say a bit of both. And it's unclear to me how successful that's going to be. Like, I talked to him last week. He basically was like, look, they've got a $1 million war chest on their side, and I have, maybe $1,000 I'm going to use to campaign against this. So, I mean, we'll see how his opposition takes shape, whether, it sort of gathers momentum. According to, the latest Fairfax poll, Prop B, the workforce plan, has, majority support. It's got some opposition from two people on council on opposite sides of the spectrum, notably Clayton Perry in District 10, very, taking sort of the conservative tack. We need to, if we're going to do this, if we're going to actually spend money on something, we need to plug it into small businesses. Then you have Roberto Trevino on the left, basically saying, like, plug all that into housing assistance. What are we doing? And basically, there are a couple of arguments that are out there, but a lot of it stems on, like, we need more immediate relief. We can't afford to just wait 4 years or so.
Well, one thing we know about Brockhouse is that he's really close with the fire union, and that union hasn't been shy about weighing in on, ballot items in the past. Have they taken any kind of stand on the sales tax initiative or not?
Not that I've seen. I've not seen them wade into this just yet, but perhaps, they're waiting until the last, couple of weeks of the election. Maybe they will be waiting in. I don't know.
Josh, is this a way for Brockhouse to gear up for a mayoral run, do you think? What is he saying about that?
I have to wonder about that. Because there are a couple schools of thought about, Nirenberg's position right now. A lot of people seem to be favorable towards his the way that he's handled the pandemic response. A lot of what I hear out there is that he's been a real steady hand in all of this, very sort of calm voice. But then there's this other school of thought out there that I hear, which is, if the hurt is still present in the community 6 months from now, or, in May, I have no sense of time, clearly.
Which is always a great call being a reporter.
Yeah, it's fantastic. What day is it? No, but there's this other school of thought that perhaps if the economic hurt is still present in the community, and by any indication, it'll probably be a little bit better, but not much. By the time we get to May, we'll still be in the recovery phase, and there will probably still be the virus present. Yeah, but that leaves any incumbent vulnerable. So is Brockhouse positioning for that? Probably. But I wonder what the appetite is for something like a Brockhouse at this point is. But I don't know.
Yeah, very interesting. Well, we're going to take a short break and we'll be right back.
Be sure to check out other Express News podcasts such as Express Briefing, hosted by me, Luis Vasquez. Every weekday morning, I'll bring you the top headlines for the day in about 10 minutes or less. You can find Express Briefing on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
All right, we're back, and want to talk a little bit about three really close battleground races that we're seeing in the San Antonio area right now. We got U.S. District 23, which is currently held by Will Hurd, but he decided not to seek another term, and we got a really close race there. It's always close in that race. We've got State Senate District 19, which covers a lot of that same ground from South San Antonio across West Texas. And then we got U.S. District 21, which has been kind of a Republican stronghold, but we have looks like a competitive race there this year. All three of those races had televised debates last week. These are all seats held by Republicans, but at least a couple of them, I think U.S. District 23 and Senate District 19, look like there's a good possibility that they could flip to Democrats. One of the things that's interesting is you're seeing in all of these races, in U.S. District 23, you got Gina Ortiz-Jones versus Tony Gonzalez. Tony Gonzalez, the Republican, is suggesting that Gina Ortiz-Jones, wants to defund the police, and we're seeing that kind of the defund the police argument is kind of a big one that we're seeing in a lot of these races, even though the Democratic candidates are generally saying they don't support that. On the Democratic side, Gina Ortiz-Jones is making the argument that Tony Gonzalez wants to take health care away from people, will not protect pre-existing conditions, because he doesn't support maintaining the Affordable Care Act. one of the things that's really unique about U.S. District 23 is that Tony Gonzalez is making the argument that Gina Ortiz-Jones does not live in Texas, that she lives in Washington, D.C. And the backstory on this is that she worked for the federal government from 2013 to 2017. She bought a condominium there, which she still owns. She rents it. I did a column about this last week. She rents it. I've seen the lease agreement. And the rent payments are sent to the address that Gina Ortiz-Jones claims as her San Antonio home. Her mother owns 2 houses in San Antonio. Gina Ortiz-Jones claims that she lives in one and her mother lives in the other one. And I think philosophically what's happening here is that Tony Gonzalez has decided that he's going to do a lot of in-person events during the pandemic. Gina Ortiz-Jones has made the decision 6 months ago that she was going to do a virtual campaign. And so she's had like 27 virtual town halls, but has done very little in-person campaigning. So he's made the argument that we can't have a virtual Congress, a member of Congress. You can't govern by Zoom. But he's kind of stretched that to saying she lives in Washington, D.C. Even after, I looked at this in the column, he continues to make this argument that she lives in Washington, D.C. I mean, is anybody, just curious, we see candidates kind of distort the other people's positions on issues quite often, but when there's so much factual evidence that this person actually lives in one place and the opponent is saying they live somewhere else.
I mean, it's like I've said, it's sort of a Trumpian approach of just repeating something that's untrue until it just becomes true.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Another way of looking at it, and it could be related to what Brian is saying, is he's probably looking at polls that aren't very favorable to his candidacy. So continuing this lie, untruth, he just sees it as something that's going to help. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty clearly established that she lives here. He continues saying that she doesn't, and it's just not true. You know?
And there was a Republican poll that came out last week that had him behind by 1 point, which I think has been that same firm a few months ago had, I think, him behind by 2. So, I think it's going to be a close race. I think it's generally close in District 23. I think all the different factors seem to benefit her campaign just because we're probably going to have a big turnout, which generally helps Democrats in that district. But I'm sorry, what were we going to say?
Yeah, so I'm very interested in sort of the dynamic of, Republicans running away from the position that they don't support, like, say, pre-existing conditions in the Affordable Care Act when, they've repeatedly sued to nullify the Affordable Care Act. And then it's interesting to me, like, and you see Trump trying to tar Biden with the defund police argument at the national level, and Biden routinely says, I'm not in favor of that, not in favor of that. Bloomberg City Lab actually had a story not too long ago about how, like, most cities that have had, like, sort of budget passed after, the summer of protests, including San Antonio, have actually increased police spending. Right. So you're just seeing, like, these supposedly sort of, like, blue cities, all, go in favor of actually boosting police spending. So, I mean, there's not a whole lot of evidence that's even actually really happening.
It's fear mongering. And even Minneapolis, which in the wake of the George Floyd
walked away from it.
Yeah. They because it happened in their city and they were obviously traumatized by what happened. And they decided, well, we're going to just basically dismantle the police department and start with something new. And they're walking that back now. And so it's fear mongering tactic on the Republican side. I think I wanted to say on the pre-existing conditions point, I think you made a great point on that, because what we're seeing, I mean, for example, Tony Gonzalez in his race with Gina Ortiz-Jones, they had a KSAT debate last week. And when she would say, she made this point repeatedly that he's going to threaten protections for pre-existing conditions. And he would point out that he's had some health challenges in his life. He has pre-existing conditions. He would never take them away, but no plan was really offered to protect them. And the Affordable Care Act was unique because it said, if we're going to guarantee that pre-existing conditions are covered, in order to do that, you have to also guarantee that people get coverage, because otherwise there's the fear that some people might wait till they are sick, and then it creates all kinds. You don't have a really balanced insurance system. So they had to make sure that you had the very unpopular individual mandate, which was going to penalize people if they didn't get insurance, and also they had created these exchanges where people could get had the ability to sign up for insurance if they didn't have it from some other means. So you have to have a system set up. You can't just say, as Trump did by signing an executive order saying, I'm protecting pre-existing conditions. It just doesn't work like that. And I think that is, I have to think that's going to be a big issue in a lot of congressional races around the country, because people, the Affordable Care Act has had a really, sort of turbulent history, and it was very unpopular when it was first passed, but it has grown in popularity over the years. And you're talking about 20 million people who are covered by it. And, if you're going to replace it or you're going to get rid of it, you have to have some kind of solid replacement. And I think that's going to be a big issue in a lot of these races. So I think we're going to leave it there. We're going to be following the election results. There's a lot going on with the presidential race. We'll have more on that next week. It looks like Joe Biden is he's investing some money, and there is some kind of effort on his part to try to see what he can do in Texas. And we'll have something to talk about next week on that front. I want to thank everybody for listening, and hope everybody's doing well. We'll catch up with you next week. Take care.